At 9 o'clock sharp, I sat across the polished glass table, facing the man who was not only my boss, but also my father-in-law. Alan Carter, CEO of Carter Dynamics, sat tall, silver-haired, and smug, radiating the posture of a man who shook your hand like he owned your soul. For 5 years, I had poured my life into his company, sacrificing weekends, missing holidays, and bringing in 3 of the top 5 most lucrative accounts this year alone. My last pitch single-handedly closed a $2.7 million contract. I had married his daughter Madison 3 years ago, genuinely believing we were building a future together. But the atmosphere in the boardroom was icy. Janice from HR, who usually smiled like her life depended on it, sat with her lips pressed into a tight, pale line. When Alan leaned forward and flatly announced they were letting me go due to performance issues, the words hit me like a bucket of ice water. There were no performance issues, and we both knew it. I tried to push back, searching his face for a sign of a joke or a mistake, but his expression never flickered. Instead, he gave me a small, dismissive smirk and mentioned a generous severance package, treating 5 years of sweat equity like trash to be swept out before lunch. I walked out of that building in a heavy fog, not even angry yet, just entirely paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of the betrayal. The elevator ride down felt like a slow fall into a dark pit, but through the panic, my mind kept clinging to one thought: Madison. She would understand. She would stand by me, rage against her father, and help me fix this. But the moment I unlocked the front door of our minimalist penthouse, reality shattered. Madison was sitting on our pristine white leather sofa in a silk robe, sipping coffee as if she were spending a casual morning at a luxury spa. There was no concern in her eyes, no warm embrace, not even a fake attempt at sympathy. When I told her what happened, her lips slowly curled into a cold, cruel smile. She reached into her pocket and handed me a plain white envelope, calling it the instructions for my next chapter. Inside was a glossy promotional brochure for a local homeless shelter. She looked me dead in the eye and casually said that she no longer needed me now that I was jobless. My wedding ring felt like a piece of burning iron on my finger. Our wedding photo was still hanging proudly above the fireplace, yet she was throwing me out like garbage without even a second thought. When I pressed her, she stood up, brushed past me without making contact, and admitted that I was merely a temporary project. Her father had wanted me gone, and she was finally done pretending to care. I left that penthouse with a single duffel bag and a buzzing phone containing a final 3-word text from her: "Don't come back." For 7 agonizing days, absolute silence followed. No calls, no texts, no explanations, and no remorse. I stayed in a cheap, run-down motel on the edge of town, lying on a worn mattress and staring at the water-stained ceiling, while my mind replayed every single moment of our marriage on an endless loop. The candlelit dinners, the spontaneous weekend getaways, the late-night quiet laughs, the warm embraces, and the soft promises of forever. It was all a carefully scripted lie. I had been a convenient pawn in a game I didn't even know I was playing. But Madison and her father made one fatal assumption. They thought I was just an ordinary, middle-class guy who had gotten lucky by marrying into wealth. What Madison never cared to ask, and what Alan never bothered to investigate, was who I was before I ever walked into Carter Dynamics. My last name wasn't listed on my corporate resume for a deliberate reason, because the real me didn't need one. My grandfather had founded and built the global parent conglomerate that personally owned the distribution rights to every single product Carter Dynamics manufactured. I wasn't just wealthy. I came from generations of absolute corporate legacy. I had kept my background completely hidden because I wanted to prove to myself that I could build a life on my own merits without leaning on a family safety net. I wanted to see if someone could love and respect me for who I was, rather than what I inherited. Turns out, they couldn't. During that dark week in the motel, I didn't sulk or waste time feeling sorry for myself. I strategically prepared. I made 2 direct calls, one to my family's private wealth manager and the second to our lead corporate legal defense team. While Madison assumed I was sleeping on a park bench, I was quietly buying up massive control. By day 3, my trust fund held more leverage over her father's company than Alan could ever comprehend. They had thrown away the only person who possessed the financial authority to save them from impending bankruptcy. At 2:34 a.m. on the 8th night, my phone suddenly illuminated the dark motel room. Alan Carter's name flashed across the screen, followed immediately by Madison's, and then Alan's again. Over the next hour, a staggering total of 223 frantic calls poured in, along with dozens of hysterical text messages. They had finally discovered my true identity. Staring at the frantic glow of my screen, I smiled for the first time in days, knowing the table had completely turned. Around noon the following day, I returned to the penthouse. I didn't go back to argue or plead. I walked in like a silent storm, revisiting a crime scene. Madison was sitting in the kitchen, a half-empty wine glass in her hand, her hair disheveled and her mascara heavily smeared. She looked visibly panicked. The second she saw me, she rushed forward, gasping my name and trying to wrap her arms around me, as if nothing had changed. I stepped back, holding up a hand, and told her in a flat, icy tone not to touch me. She immediately switched tactics, tears filling her eyes as she tried to blame everything on her father, claiming he had manipulated her into making a mistake. I cut her off instantly, reminding her that he didn't hand me a homeless shelter brochure, she did. Realizing her sob story wasn't working, the mask dropped entirely, revealing pure venom. She sneered, calling me weak, boring, and lacking ambition, before openly boasting that she had been sleeping with another man throughout our marriage because I wasn't enough for her. The confession burned, but I didn't flinch. I had suspected the late-night excuses and hidden phone screens for months. Stepping closer, I informed her that the penthouse, the luxury vehicle in the garage, and the black credit cards in her purse were no longer active. The car had been towed 10 minutes prior, and the credit lines were completely frozen. I dropped a single document onto the kitchen counter, a certified legal notice proving that my trust had officially purchased Carter Dynamics' overwhelming debt obligations and acquired majority control. She stood frozen, paralyzed with disbelief, as I turned around and walked out the door while her wine glass shattered against the wall behind me. The next morning, I stood at the head of the executive boardroom table at Carter Dynamics, the exact room where Alan had fired me just 8 days earlier. When Alan walked in, flanked by his top executives, he looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. He froze in horror, demandingly asking what I was doing in his chair. I calmly instructed everyone to sit down, slid a thick navy folder across the table, and watched the remaining color drain entirely from his face as he read the legal ownership documents. My family trust had bought out his investors, absorbed his toxic debts, and seized absolute operational control. He stammered out weak threats about his legal team, but I reminded him that my legal team was already standing in the hallway. I officially terminated his employment as Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately, informed him that Human Resources would assist him in clearing out his personal items, and instructed him not to embarrass himself in front of his former staff on his way out. Later that afternoon, I met Madison one last time to serve her formal divorce papers. She begged, sobbed, and claimed she was just confused and pressured by her father, but I left her standing in an empty apartment with her luxury lifestyle permanently stripped away. Over the next 3 weeks, word trickled back to me that her social circle had completely abandoned her the second her money and status dried up. One rainy evening outside my new office building, she ambushed me near my car, looking pale, exhausted, and wearing a cheap, oversized coat. She tried to offer a pathetic, humbled apology, admitting that the man she had been cheating on me with had just been arrested for grand fraud and assault after using her for her family's wealth. I simply stared at her with the same blank, emotionless expression she had given me when handing over that shelter envelope, closed my car door, and drove away into the night without saying a word. The final blow came shortly after, when an old college friend reached out with undeniable proof, a leaked security video from 9 months prior showing Madison and Alan in a private hotel suite, meticulously calculating a plot to frame me for corporate negligence, ruin my professional reputation, and push me out of the family assets so they could claim complete control. It wasn't an emotional lapse or a panicked mistake. It was a cold, premeditated crime against me. I didn't hesitate. I authorized my legal representatives to release the complete audio and video recordings directly to the financial press. Within 24 hours, the story went viral nationwide. Carta Dynamics stock plummeted by 43% in a single trading day. Federal regulators launched formal investigations into internal corporate fraud, and the board stripped Alan of any remaining titles, while Madison fled from all public life in complete shame. When a visibly broken Madison snuck into my corner office a week after the scandal broke, pleading to know if she was going to be arrested and begging to know why I had let her sink so low, I looked at her with total clarity. I told her that I hadn't destroyed her life. She had lit the fuse herself the moment she decided to trade genuine love for cheap greed. I had let her go the exact second she handed me that brochure. Today, the corporate dust has finally settled. Under new executive management, the company has completely restructured and stabilized, turning a massive profit, while ethical standards were finally restored. I took the ultimate step of closure by making a massive, anonymous financial donation to the very homeless shelter Madison had used to mock me, funding new facilities, hot meals, and career development programs for hundreds of people in genuine need. Looking out over the city skyline from my office window, I realized that the greatest victory wasn't watching my enemies fall apart under the weight of their own lies. The true victory was realizing that when someone hands you a brochure for your rock bottom, they are inadvertently handing you the blueprint to build your own empire.